In the last lecture, we started scripting our simple port scanner, which basically want to create a tool that will given a target IP address, well, and given a type of scan, says TCP scan, SYN scan, XML scan, or UDP scan, will scan the ports given as an input, as an option, scan those ports using that particular type of scan, and then give us the result. And then we were able to create a function, get argument, which is basically the function that will pass over the terminal and then get both the positional argument as the optional argument, the target, the scan, and then the user specifying the optional the port as optional argument using the -p or -pl or -pr option. So now we are going to continue building upon this program. Now we can go we can proceed into performing the port scan, because we might have an issue. Say the user space enters the port using -p option. If the user enter a port using -p option, now the program will just get it and then make that particular port. Say the user entered a single port, say port 80 using -p option, and then the program will just get that port number and then make it available to the program, and we can access it using option port, as we have been doing before. Now, what if the user enter a single port using -p and then enter a port list specified by 20, 30, 40, and then also enter a port range, say by the format 40 to 100? How can we generate the individual port numbers from 40 to 100? So we might encounter issues because we didn't build such a functionality. So that is what we are going to do in this program. Create a function that will process the port that the user enters, collect them together, do away with duplicate entries, sort them, and then return to us sorted port list that we are going to scan. And for the purpose of that, I modified the program, the algorithm a little, and then added step number 2 as a step to process the port and return a sorted port list. So that is basically what we will be trying to achieve in this particular lecture. So I'll just come over here and then create a new function. So line number 36 is the main body of our program, where we invoke function get argument. So we just come down here and then define a new function. I'll call it setport. Setport. Then we are going to see how we can make use of this function to set our port. All right. So I'll create a list, a new list, a list. Okay, let me call it a list of ports. A list of ports, or a port list to return. Alright, so I call it a port of list to return and then create an empty list. So basically what this list is going to do is that it's going to we created an empty list, and then we are going to populate this list with the port that the user of this program is going to enter using either -p option or -pl or -pr. That is, he enter a port range using -pr. So we are going to populate this list and then return the list at the end of the function. So next we are going to check if this is, the user enters a port using the -p option. So option -port. Remember that if the user enters a port using -p, we will be able to access it using port. And since we are returning option, we are passing over the argument using passArgs and then assigning it to the variable option, and then we are returning option. And that means that we can access the value of this variable port using option.port, as we have been doing before. So now when we invoke function setport in the main body of the program, so let's come here and invoke function setport. Port. So when we invoke it, we don't need to pass any argument to it. But since option is a global variable, it is not within any. It's not a local variable within any of the functions that we have been defined so far. So any function within this program can be able to access variable option. So now we will be able to our program, our variable, our function here set forth will be able to access option.port. So now we are checking if option.port actually has value. If it has value, then we are going to do something to it. So actually what we are going to it, we are going to assign that port to our list, a port list to return, since basically just a single port that the user will specify using the optional argument -p, which is -p or -port. Okay, so I'm going to say if option -port, then we are going to have a port list to return, which is a list. Now I'm going to invoke append method, which is a list method that is used in adding an element to a list. And then I'm going to append. What am I going to append? I'm going to append option.port. So option.port. So now our list now is no longer empty. Now it contains, if at all the user enter a port number using the -p option or -port, then we are going to populate our list with that single element to that particular list. So now let's print it out. Let's print it out to see whether we have been able to achieve what we are trying to achieve. So I'll save it. Now I'll go back to the terminal now and then try to run this function and see whether we are on the right track. All right, so basically it will check if option.port has value. If it has value now, it is now going to make use of append method and then add it to our list, and then we are finally printing the list. So now let's go back to the terminal and then let me clear the terminal, and then I'm going to enter a single entry -p80 and then hit enter. So I'm going to enter my password, then okay, so perfect. So you can see our program is working perfectly. So now it has what? It has printed out the single port that the user has entered using the -p option. So next, now let's let's proceed further. Let's see what we can add functionality to our program. Let's see how we can build upon this function. Now, what if the user also enter a function using the -pl, which is the port list, using -pl option or -port list, and then he enter a port number using this format 20, 30, 40 separated by a comma? How can we access those port numbers and assign them to our list? So now what we are going to do, we are also going to recheck again if option dot port list remember that we are assessing the value of that particular variable as we have defined it under the dist parameter as port list. So we are going to assess the value using port list. So I'm now checking if port list has value. So if it has value now, remember that the user enters it using the format 20, 30, 40. So that means we need to do something to do away with this comma so that we get this individual values 20, 30, and 40. So to do that, we are going to invoke method split and then pass comma to it as parameter so that we want it to separate these numbers into individual numbers and assign them into a list using method split. So I'll just come up here and then I'll say a port list. Okay, I'll just come up here and say so if option.list, it has value now, and then we can see so let's create a new variable, say fourth, and then we can say fourth equals to option port list, and then we are going to invoke method split, and then our criteria for doing the splitting is a comma. So now this port variable now will now contain a list of numbers that the user entered using the port list. Yeah. So now okay. So, and then we can now print them out and see how they actually look like. So let's proceed to print them out. Let's see also how the numbers they are going to be. So a print, okay, all right, a fourth. Okay, so we can say print fourth. Let's print the fourth and see. No, not port list. Yeah, ports. So we are printing ports. So go to the terminal and then see what we have been able to achieve. So let me clear the terminal and then I'll run this. All right, so we just enter a single port. So let's enter using this PL plug. Let's enter 20, 30, and then 40, and then we hit enter. All right, so perfect. You see, we have been able to achieve that. So we have the list containing 20, 30, and then 40. Perfect. All right. So now let's go back to our program again, and then but we didn't assign them to the port list return. So what I'm going to do now, I'll just take this one down a little, and then since now this is a port is a list, and our port list return is also a list. Now we can combine these two lists. Add this port to our list by saying a port list return, and then using compound assignment operation ports. So basically what I'm doing now, I'm combining these two lists together. So whatever we have here, we are adding it to our port list return. Okay, so now what we are going to print out now is a port list return. So a port list to return. Okay, so we are finished making use of this, so I can do away with it. I'm going to delete it, and then now let's go back to the terminal again, run this program and see what we are going to have as output. So I'll go, okay, so now I need to clear the terminal. Let me just run it like this and see what we're going to have. So perfect. So we have the initial 80 that we entered using the -p plug, and then using the -pl 20, 30, 40, we have 80, 20, 30, 40. Perfect. So now we are on the right track. So now let's go back and see now if the user enter a port list using the port range. So how can we handle that? So now we are going to say if option dot fourth range. Okay, so let me go back and check. How do we define that particular parameter? Okay, using fourth range. How do we define that option? Using fourth range. Okay, fourth range. Okay, so we can access it using option.fourth range. Now, if option.fourth range has value, what are we going to do with that value? Remember that in that range, the user is going to enter the numbers using a range 40 to 100. So if he enter, how can we generate the numbers from 40 to 100? Okay, so now let's come back and see how we can do that also. So to do that, we are also going to split this into two numbers. We have the lower range, we have the upper range. So let's do away with this dash symbol, this dash character. So what we are going to do now, I'll come here and say I can see port equals to, okay, so I can say option dot port range, and then I'm going to invoke method split also, and then the criteria for the split is a dash. So now port will now actually contain a list with two values. Okay, so what am I having here? So now we actually contain a list with two values that contain our lower range, our lower bound, and our upper bound. Okay, so now to access the lower bound and the upper bound, let's define two variables. Let me call it one lower bound, to make things easy, let's go and print this out to make sure that we are doing the right thing. So let's take it easy. So let's print port also here as well and see what we have. Print port. So we are also done with this, so I can do away with this printing the port. So let me delete it. So print port. What do we have here? So if we enter and then enter using the -pr, enter a range, say 40 to 100. Let's see what we are going to have as output. Perfect. So we see it has been able to split it for us into 40 and 100. All right, so let's go back again and see what we can do. So when we come back here, let's try to split it into lower bound and upper bound, and then from there we can be able to generate the range. So we have lower bound. Okay, so lower bound, which is the lower part of the range, as we can see from the terminal. In this case it is 40 and the upper bound is 100. All right, so we have the lower bound. We can see the lower bound. Okay, so this is a list. How can we access the first element of a list? We make use of the index, so as we have seen earlier. So 40 0, this will give us the first element of the list, and then we have the upper bound. Upper bound is also 41. Okay, so we have 40 is the lower bound and 41 is the upper bound. Okay, so now let's print the result out and see, or let's print one of them and see. Let's print upper bound and see whether that's actually what we are aiming to, what we are targeting. So let me go back to the terminal again and then run it and see. Perfect. So you see we have it as 100, which is the upper bound that we are aiming to have. Okay, but we might encounter some issues because, all right, but let's proceed. We are going to see how we can handle the issue, because they are a string. Now we need to convert them into integer. All right, so now we have the upper bound, we have the lower bound, so we need to generate the numbers from 40 to 100. Because this is a range, we have the upper bound 40, the lower bound 40, and then the upper bound 100. Now we want to generate numbers from 40 to 100, 40, 41, 42, 43, up to 100. So how can we do that? So to do that, we are going to make use of a function called, or method called range. So we are going to make use of a Python method called range to generate numbers from a given range. So I can say fourth now. Reassign this variable fourth with the numbers. Okay, so I can say fourth range equals and then assignment operation, and now I'll invoke the method range, and then I'm going to pass it the lower bound, and then the upper bound. And then now how function range works is that the upper bound has to be one number greater than what we are expecting to have as upper bound. Since we are aiming to generate numbers from 40 to 100, so what we are going to give to method range as our lower bound is 40, but at upper bound it has to be one number greater than the upper bound, so it has to be 101. So I will just go back here again and then increment my upper bound by 1, and then we are going to have the arrow that I was trying to state here. So let's run it again and see that particular arrow, and then see how we can correct it. All right, so I'll rerun the program again and then hit enter. So as we can see, we have an arrow can only concatenate str, not int, because str can only concatenate str, not int. So we are having we are trying to concatenate a string to an integer. So what we have here is that we are having the lower bound and the upper bound as strings, not integers. So when we to split them, they are going to be in the form of strings, not integers. So we need to convert them into integer using casting. So I'll just make use of cast and then int, convert them explicitly into integers. So I now have my lower bound and upper bound as in the form of integers. All right, so now I have upper bound in the form of integers. Now when I run the program, let me run the program and see whether I'm going to have an error again. So I'll run the program and see. Okay, perfect. So our program runs successfully. We didn't print it out anything. That is why we are not having any printouts, but our program run successfully. So we have our fourth range. This will generate the numbers from the lower bound and the upper bound for us. But we can print it out and see. So we can print. And if you can see, we didn't specify a step. So by default, the step is 1. But if we want a step, let's say from 40 to 42 to 44 to 46, then we can specify the increment as 2. But since the increment is just 1, from 40, 41, 42 up to 100, just a step of 1, so we don't need to specify the step. So now I want to print out the fourth range. So I'll just come here. I want to print fourth range. fourth range. All right, fourth range. And now let's see what we are going to have as our printout. So I'll just go back to the terminal here again. Let me clear the terminal and then run the program and see what we are going to have as output. Perfect. So we have range 40 to 101. Okay, so it didn't actually generate the range for us. All right. So let's have the okay. Let's step up one. Lower bound, upper bound. Okay, step up one for assign it to variable fourth range. Okay, let's go back again and run the program and see what we are going to have as output. It's still range. Okay, still range for 4101. So okay, perfect. So let's proceed with our bit. All that we know that the variable fourth range is going to contain the number. The range will actually generate the numbers from 40 to 100. All right. So now we have our list containing the range, so we can add it to the so we can sort it out. We can sort the numbers into ascending or descending order. Okay, so basically let's try to add them to our list. Fourth range or a list of a port of a. Okay, so now let's add it to our list and then print out the output now. So now I'm going to say if a port list to return, and then I'm going to add it to making use of compound assignment operation, and then I'm going to add fourth range to it. Fourth range. Okay, and then finally I'm going to print out let's print it out a fourth list to return. So save it and then go back to my terminal and then run the program and see what I'm going to have as output. So I'll hit enter. Okay, perfect. So we see how we have our values, 40, 80 an integer, 20 a numerical, a string, 30 a string. So we're having a mixture of elements. Some are integers, some are strings, and we may also have duplicate entries. So we need to sort that out before returning the our a fourth list to return. So before returning this list containing the fourth that we want to scan, we need to perform more processing on this because we're having a mixture of integers and strings, and also we have duplicate entries. Okay, so we might encounter issues when we start performing the port scanning, because we can perform port scanning over a string entity, because ports are represented as integers, not as strings. All right, so we need to perform further processing. So let me do away with this printing, because our aim is not to print, is to return a list containing 40 numbers. All right, so we need to convert this all the element here into an integers. So to do that, I'm going to create a new list. All right, so I need to do away with this as well. So I'm going to create an empty list. Okay, so let me placeholder list. Let me call it a placeholder list. Placeholder list. All right, placeholder list. And then I'm going to assign it with a port list to return. So a port list to return. Okay, am I on the right track? No. That's not what we are going to do. So an empty list. So let me create an empty list. Now I'm going to iterate through the element of the a port list to return, and then convert them into integers, and then assign them to my placeholder list. So that is why I'm going to make use of the loop, the for loop, and then for element, let me call them element. We have done this before. For element in this list, a fourth list to return. So I want to do something to them. I'm going to go through them and then do something to each and every one of them. So what I'm going to do, I want to convert them into integer and then assign them to my list here. So I can say for element in a fourth list to return. Now element. Okay, so I will append them, convert them into integer, and then append them to my new placeholder list. So placeholder list, which is a list, placeholder list. I'm going to invoke append method on it, which is a list method used on adding element to a list. So I'm going to populate that list with the element of the port list return. So, and then, but before I populate them, I have to convert them using casting, convert them into integers. So int, and then what I'm doing, what am I converting? I'm converting element. Okay, so I'm converting element into integer, and then assigning them to this a placeholder list. All right, so that is what I'm doing now. And then after I am done with that, now I can reassign those elements back to the port list to return. So I can now say a port list return equals to, and then I'm going to reassign that placeholder element, because that is why I can name it a placeholder. Just basically a placeholder to just hold so that I can perform this operation, and then you reassign them back to a port list to return. So a placeholder list, a port list return equals to a placeholder list. So now a port list return will now contain all the elements and a list whose all elements are integers. So now let me print them out and then see whether I have been able to actually achieve what I'm trying to achieve. So I'm going to print a port list to return. All right, so I will just go to the terminal again. All right, I won't have indentation issue. So let me save it, and then let me go to the terminal again and then run the program and see whether I have been able to achieve what I am trying to achieve. All right, so let me clear the terminal and then run the program and then see. Okay, perfect. So as we can see, we have been able to achieve what we were trying to achieve. So we have 80, 20, all the elements are now integers. But another thing, when we have duplicate entries, we can see 80 here and we can see 80 here. So how can we do away with that so that we won't have duplicate entries? So because we don't need to scan a single port more than once. So we just need to perform a single scan on it and then do away with it and move on to the next number. So we want to sort this list in ascending order and then eliminate duplicate entries. So to do that, I'm going to go back to our program and see how we can enhance it further. All right, so instead of printing it out here, I'll do away with this print. I'll remove the print. All right, so I do away with everything. So we have a port list return containing our list. So now we need to set this list and then do away with duplicate entries. And then to do that, we are also going to invoke another method called set. Okay, so set. So set will now make use of the set to now actually set. So let me invoke my placeholder list again. Or instead of okay, so a port list return, let me now invoke method set on it and then pass to it placeholder list. Okay, so that now I can set all the element, do away with duplicate entries, and then but basically this is set is a method that functions just like the normal set we have in mathematics. So it's going to set all the elements in this particular list, but it's going to return to us a set object. Okay, it's going to generate element, a unique distinct element, and do away with any duplicate entry, just as we have in set in mathematics. We don't have the element in a set are unique. So likewise also here, it's going to generate unique element, but it's going to return to us a set object, not a list. So let's see that by actually printing it out. So a port list to return, but we are aiming to have a list, not a set. So when we print this out, you see that it is going to be a set, not a list. So let's go to the terminal and then run the program again and see, and then run it. Perfect. As you can see, this is a set. You can see it is used a brace. It's using a brace, not a square bracket. So using a brace. So that is basically a list, a set rather. So this is generated to us a set, but all the elements here, they are unique. You can see that all the elements, they are unique: 20, 30, 40, 41, 43, 44, 46, 74, 47, 48, 49, 50. All the elements, they are unique. Okay, so all the elements, they are unique. Now, so we need to go and convert those elements into a list. So to convert them, we have to invoke another method called list again. So it's a list, and then we reconvert them, and then okay. So now we are now converting our, after using the set method to now do away with duplicate entries, we are now invoking another method called list to now convert them from set to a list, back to a list. So now, and then we are printing out the list in line number 61. So let me go back again and see, run the program and see whether we have been able to achieve what we are trying to achieve. So I'll run the program again and then see whether perfect. So as we can see, it has now been converted back into a list. All right, perfect. Okay, so now we have been able to successfully sort our forts, whether the user enter the fort using -p or -pl or -p, or specify a fort range using the -pr. Our function has now the capability to handle whatsoever option the user enter the fort. So now we can actually return the fort, a fort list return, which is a list that contains all the forts that the user actually enters. So a fort list to return. All right. Before we return it, we can also perform a further work on it. We can decide to sort it out and then finally return it. So a fort list to return, I can sort it. I can invoke make sure sort to sort it, because actually a set method can return to us an unordered set and elements that are not ordered, and then we convert them into a list. Now we want to invoke sort method to now actually sort those elements in ascending order and ascending order of hierarchy, so that we can have the lower numbers first, the higher numbers first. So we have here what appears to be sorted out, but to avoid taking any chances, let's invoke functions method sort to actually sort the element of the list before returning it back to the line of code that actually invoke the function. So we are invoking it a fort list return dot sort, and then finally we can then return it. So I can say now return a port list return. So we are now actually returning it. All right. So and then now we can set forth. Now we can print set forth. Okay, so we can have, okay, so let's print it out here on the body of code that where we invoke it, and then see whether we'll be able to achieve what we are trying to achieve. So let me go back to the terminal again and then run it. If there's any error, we take care of that error. So let me run the program and then see. Okay, perfect. So as we can see, we have our program here. So 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100. So we have it sorted out. And depending on even if the user enter a duplicate entries, we're not going to have a duplicate entries in our the list of forts to return. Now, what if the user since they are optional argument, the program will still run without them. What if the user didn't specify any fort? Let's run this program and see. Perfect. And you see the program runs perfectly, but it return an empty list because the user didn't specify any port. That is not how we want the program to behave. So we have to put some error handling techniques to handle such situations, so that when the user did not specify any port using any of the optional argument, the program will call his attention to make him enter a fort using either -p or -pl or -pr. All right. So now what we are going to do before we return a port list return, let's actually check to make sure that a port list return actually contain values, so that we are not going to return an empty list. Okay. So to do that, we are going to check, and then we are going to invoke a method called len. Now, len is a list method that will return to us the number of elements in a list. So if len Now we are checking if the len a port list return, if it is less than 0. Now if it is less than 0, okay, so it's an empty list is not going to be so. Okay, if not len greater than 0, so let's check if not len of this, if it is not greater than 0. If it is not greater than 0, then we are going to invoke, we are going to call an arrow method. Okay, so we have option, then we are going to print out an arrow message. Okay, so we are outside a function argument. If we can make use of parser.arrow, but we are not within the get argument function now. So, and then we have option here, option dot okay, we are returning option here. So okay, so let's just print out using a normal print statement. So let's print an arrow message. Okay, so I'll just print an arrow message. You need to specify, you need to enter a port, and you need to enter a port number, a port to scan, a port to scan. Enter -h for health. Okay, so this will prompt the user that he hasn't entered any port number, and then let him enter -h for health to see how he can use the program, and then we want the program to terminate at this stage. So raise system exit, as we have been doing before. So raise system exit. So the program will now exit, so that it's not going to return anything. The program will exit completely. All right, so now let's rerun the program and will not enter any faults, and then see how the program is going to behave. All right, so I'll run the program again and then see what is going to happen. Okay, you need to enter a port to scan, enter -h for health. So you see the program has exited. All right, so we have successfully achieved what we are trying to achieve, and then in the next lecture we are going to see how we can continue building upon this our fault scanner.